and welcome back to my channel where I'm going to cover the Cleric's Peace Domain class specialization from Tasha's Guide to Everything, providing a brief description of the subclass as well as explain and set up the various features gained. Whenever there are nations, there are officials who oversee the process of signing treaties and armistices, much like today's diplomatics corps take care of that in the real world. However, while the clerics of this domain are heavily involved in that process, they are also involved in resolving conflicts and helping people to stand up against those who do harm, specifically around areas of peace. As a result, this domain of clerics has been formed to deal with these issues, and as such, their features and spells are designed to inspire people into doing great things against those who want to do harm to peace itself. Once again, the clerics of this ethos will follow very specific gods who are directly aligned with what their own beliefs represent, as we can see in the example table that is part of this subclass sheet. Now, clerics are one of the few classes who get to choose their specialization as the character is being created, because their domain dictates what spells they will start off with. But this video is going to focus entirely on the domain of peace, so if you're looking to get an idea of the basics behind creating a cleric, I highly recommend you watch the video where I create a life domain cleric, as linked in the description below. Additionally, the Forge domain video also shows a couple of optimizations that I made as part of the learning process that I myself am still going through when it comes to fantasy rounds. So I also highly recommend that you watch that video as well. That means, though, that in order for me to complete the rest of this video, I need to create a level 1 cleric. So bear with me, I will be right back and show you a couple of steps along the way. So I am now at the point where I want to choose the cleric class. Once I do that, we can see down here that the class specialization is an option that I can choose from. In this case, I want Peace Domain. Now I'm going to go through and set up the rest of the class and bring you back once I've saved the character. Once the class is created, the first feature your character is going to gain is called Domain Spells of Peace, and it becomes available after your character has been created. This feature grants your character spells that you will learn automatically at the clerical levels defined, so Aid and Warding Bond, for example, are required when the character reaches level 3. You gain 2 spells at level 1, but also gain 2 new spells every 2 levels up to level 9. So this includes levels 3, 5, 7, and 9. These spells do not count against your prepared spells list. In fact, they are always available for you to use and won't impact the number of spells you can prepare each day. The only restriction is that in order to cast the spell, you must have a free spell slot that you can use. When it comes to setting up this particular feature, there really isn't much that you have to do. It's already going to be added to your abilities tab, which is great because for a while it wasn't. So now this appears to be fixed and appears to be working. However, we are going to want to add these spells, Heroism and Sanctuary, to our class sheet. I'm going to get rid of that extra spell group there. And the reason why is we want to organize these slightly differently. So the first thing I'm going to do is drag Heroism over, and it's going to automatically drop into the level 1 spells for the cleric here. But I want to change this group. I'm going to actually change this to be Peace Cleric and get rid of this level 1. That will create a brand new group. And what I then want to do is drag Sanctuary right into this, and as you can see, it will automatically add that spell to this particular group. There is a catch. When this gets created, however, its group type is incorrect. It needs to be spells. And the reason for that is we want it to disappear when we go through all of our spell slots. So I'm going to go through and make a few minor adjustments here, including setting up spells on that. And I'm going to prepare these spells, as they're the ones that I need to prepare. These ones you don't need to prepare. They will always be available for your character to cast under the combat situation here. There we go. Now, if I've gone through and I've burnt through these spells, you can see that the spells go away. The only thing that remains behind are your cantrips. And that's because they don't count against any spell slots that you use. And that sets up and takes care of the peace spells for us. The next feature your character is going to gain at level 1 are some bonus proficiencies under a feature called Implement of Peace. And they give your character proficiency with Insight, Performance, or Persuasion, of which you have to choose one. So to set this up, all we have to do is go to our skills, determine which ones we don't already have, and it looks like I don't have any of those. Nope, incorrect. I have insights. So I can choose performance or persuasion as the other two spells here. So I'm going to go with, well, they both suffer the same amount, so I'm going to go with persuasion. And that'll bring this up to no penalty, as we can see here. The last feature your character gains at level 1 is called Emboldening Bond. It will allow your character to create a bond between a limited number of people equal to your character's proficiency bonus, which at this level would be 2 people, who are all within 30 feet of your character, and as long as they are willing. This can include your own character if you feel the need to do so, but the total number of people involved cannot exceed your proficiency bonus. So if you choose to include your own character in this bond, then you will only be able to choose one other person at this current level of proficiency bonuses. This effect creates a magical link between all the affected party members and will last for 10 minutes, or until you choose to use this feature again and create another bond. Each bonded person will be able, once per turn, to roll a d4 and add that result to an attack roll, a saving throw, or an ability check, much like the Bless spell provides, but in this case, it's a feature. Now, what that actually means is that for that 10-minute period, anyone who rolls an attack roll, a saving throw, or an ability check will be able to add an additional d4 to their roll. It doesn't expire until the 10 minutes itself is up, or until you use the feature again to create another bond. So theoretically, we could create an effect that is always enabled on a particular character and simply expires after 10 minutes. That way you don't have to worry about it. However, your character will be able to use this feature a number of times equal to your proficiency bonus before your character is going to have to complete a long rest to regain all uses. So let's go ahead and actually add this to our Actions tab. I'm going to drag this into place. I'm going to set this to Group and create a Peace Domain group. I am then going to add a new effect. And I'm going to modify that effect to be Emboldening Bond. Semicolon. And what I want to do is add an attack bonus, a saving throw bonus, and an ability check bonus, all of D4. I can do this with one effect. ATK colon D4, 1D4 to be clear, semicolon, I believe it is SAV colon 1D4, 4 rather, semicolon again, and then check colon 1D4. It lasts for 10 minutes or until you choose to cast it again. We want it to be able to apply to not just your own character, but to other targets as well. So we need to leave this as targets, and it doesn't expire outside of the duration expiration. So let's go ahead and test this. So I've gone ahead and set up a scenario here, and I'm going to go through and drag the effects onto this ape. Simply drag and drop. Now, that particular character, or in this case a creature, has these bonuses. But because it requires 2 people involved, I'm going to do it between the cleric and this. That way I can test with the cleric and not have to worry about switching where the attack action is. I'm then going to roll a check, and let's see what happens. So let's go ahead and make a skill check. Now we can see that a D4 has rolled. That means that we've got the check set up right. What about a saving throw? Excellent. That means that we see a D4 here, which means we have it set up right there. Now, I'm going to attack the succubus with the cleric here and make an attack roll. Excellent. This means we have this feature set up and ready to go. And it will expire after 10 minutes, which means it will take 100 combat rounds before it disappears. I don't think that's going away anytime soon in a normal combat scenario. Now, if you've watched my previous cleric videos, you will know that at level 2, your character is now going to gain access to a channel Divinity feature. In this case, it's called Balm of Peace. And what this gives you is that your character will now be able to move up to their maximum speed passing by any hostile creature and not incur an attack of opportunity as a result. But if your character has already partially moved before using this feature, then your remaining movement is what you have available to you for your character to move through. And what I mean by that is that if your character has 30 feet of movement and you move 10 feet, you will have 20 feet remaining that you can use as part of this feature. When your character gets to within 5 feet of another creature, your character will be able to heal them 2d6 plus your wisdom modifier in hit points, but this can only happen once per turn. However, there is a bit of ambiguity here. In the last sentence, it states a creature can only receive this healing once per turn when your character takes this action. To me, that would mean that if you got to within 5 feet of 3 party members who all need healing, you could theoretically apply this healing to all 3 of those party members as part of this movement. It's not restricting you to a specific number. It's just saying that once you get to within 5 feet of any other creature, it will apply. This feature, however, is directly linked to your Channel Divinity feature. So we're going to want to ensure that the uses that they share are expended at the same time. So what we want to do is add Channel Divinity here, create a new group called Channel Divinity. If I could spell today. And then drag in our Balm of Peace in here as well. The next thing we're going to want to do, and this, by the way, is for Turn Undead. Turn Undead. The next thing that we are going to want to do is modify the power group itself so that it has a combined usage limitation of 1. And what that means is that the whole group has a total use of 1 daily use in this case. We also want to set it up so that our wisdom is the modifier that is used in all of these cases here so that we ensure that our saving throws are all configured properly. Now, the next thing that we want to do is ensure that we add our healing capability here. So I'm going to create a new healing effect. And I'm going to modify that, add a new entry here, and we want 2d6 plus your wisdom modifier. So we want to drag in 2d6 dice here, drop that into place, and then we want to add our wisdom modifier here, and you will see that we now have 2d6 plus 4. If this stat changes at a later point in time, the system is now set up to automatically take that into account. So if you add an additional 1 point here as part of your character's leveling proficiency, when you get the extra ability scores and bring this up to 20, then it's going to automatically modify this point to be plus 5. Excellent. It means it's not going to have to deal with anything. Now, to use this is very simple. All you would have to do is move to within 5 feet of this ape, for example, and then simply drag and drop the healing onto the ape. The dice will get rolled, and it will automatically add the bonus to it. And you'll be able to do that for all 3 characters. Now, if you're going to be targeting multiple characters, for example, let me untarget the succubus here and then target the ape and the wolf. If you just click it, it will roll for that and apply it to both of the creatures that you have targeted. As you can see here, neither of them are wounded, but it applied the same amount of healing to each of the creatures, in this case the wolf and the ape. That sets everything up for Channel Divinity. Now the next thing is, once you've used it, the other Channel Divinity feature that you have also goes away. Now, this is definitely tied to your Channel Divinity feature, which means that you will only have one use until your character reaches level 6. At that particular point in time, you will gain a second use, and it will remain so until you hit level 18, at which point your character will gain the ability to use 3 Channel Divinity features before requiring a short or long rest to get the uses back. Now at level 6, your character is going to acquire the Protective Bond feature, which expands on what your Emboldening Bond can do. Once there is a group of bonded people, as long as everyone remains within 30 feet of one another, a party member can redirect damage taken by another party member by teleporting to within 5 feet of where that hit party member was located, and as long as there is unoccupied space. Essentially, the sudden teleportation is effectively putting the teleported individual directly in line with the attack so that they intercept the damage that would have otherwise been taken by the person who was initially hit. However, the only requirement is that the individual who is teleporting must have a reaction that they can use in order to do this. And additionally, when a character chooses to do this, their armor class is essentially ignored because they are choosing to absorb the damage on the other party member's behalf. That means that if a character who happens to have a higher AC is teleporting into a position to intercept damage that someone who had a lower AC is going to suffer, their overall armor class is null and void for the purposes of receiving that damage. What that means is you cannot use this as a feature to negate all damage based on the overall result of your armor class. Meaning that if someone who has an armor class of 17 teleports into a location to save someone who has an armor class of 14 and the attack roll was a 15, the person who has the armor class of 17 will still take damage. However, it is still a good way for a tank-based character to essentially soak up all damage of those party members who are a little bit more squishy. But this particular feature doesn't require any special setup. It is, however, suggested to add it to the character sheet under the Actions tab so that when you are going to intercept damage or have somebody intercept damage or even state that you're putting that protective bond into place, that it's indicated in the chat log that it was done. But something that does still need a little bit of setup is our channel Divinity features. We need to increase the number of uses by going through and ensuring that we have 2 daily uses here now. And that takes care of everything you need to deal with at level 6. Once your character reaches level 8, they will gain access to the potent spellcasting feature that allows your character to add their wisdom modifier to the total damage dealt by any cantrip spell that they cast. Now, in this particular character's case, I haven't added in any of the additional cantrips that you would normally gain. So I'm going to go ahead and quickly do that, and then I'll show you how this works. So I've gone ahead and added the Sacred Flame cantrip. I'm then going to ensure that I modify this to add the Wisdom stat to the total damage. And that's all you would normally have to do. So any cantrip that you have that will do damage as a result of that cantrip, all you have to do is simply set it up to use the Wisdom modifier, just essentially the way that I did it there. The final feature that your character is going to gain is called Expansive Bond, and it happens when your character reaches level 17, although I've gone ahead and upgraded this one to level 18 in preparation for the next section of the video. This feature further extends the Emboldening Bond and Protective Bond features by extending the range to 60 feet, and it adds damage resistances to anyone who intercepts another's damage, reducing the total amount of damage taken to it roughly by half. And what that means is that we need to add this feature to our system. Go ahead and throw it into Peace Domain. And then add a new effect to it. So we want Expansive Bond, and we want this to have an effect. We want to modify this to do Expansive Bond as the name, semicolon, resist, colon, IST, colon, and then we want to add in all damage types. And the reason being is because it essentially states right here that Protective Bond to take someone else's damage, the creature has resistances to that damage. That implies that if that damage is any one of these, you're going to be resistant to it. Doesn't matter what type it is, you're still resistant to it. And we want this to expire on the next roll. So, how does this actually work? Well, this is going to be a little bit tricky. So let's say that the Cleric, the Ape, and the Wolf here are in a bonded group. And that the Cleric is going to intercept all of the damage that the Wolf is about to suffer based on the white here. So again, my Cleric has to have a reaction. What will happen is that I need to add the effect to the Cleric. That comes into play here. Now what I have to do as the Dungeon Master is, instead of rolling the damage against the Wolf, like the white would have had It's been their active turn there. There we go. Then how this will now work is that I would roll the damage directly against the cleric. And now the cleric resisted that damage, partially resisted. You see that here. The wolf suffered no damage, and the effect has gone away. I suffered 2 points on a roll of 5. 3 plus 5, yeah, or 3 plus 2. So you can see why I said roughly half, because it rounded down. Roughly. In any event, this is the way that this is working. Now, let's say that the ape wanted to intercept the damage for the wolf. Then what you as the cleric would do is drag the effect onto the ape. Then the dungeon master would roll the damage against the ape as opposed to the cleric or the wolf. And as we can see, the ape simply lost a single point off of its temporary hit points because the total damage the white rolled was 3. You can see that right here. That rounded down to a 1. But we're not quite done with our character. The last thing that you're going to want to deal with is ensure that at level 18, you modify your channel divinity group to have 3 uses. And that's the last gain that you're going to get here. This way, when we go through and make use of these features, both of them have a quote-unquote shared use here that will expire as another's use goes through and gets used. So, that completes everything we have to deal with when it comes to our cleric. And the Peace Domain cleric definitely seems a little weak initially, but when you take the bonding features and their benefits into account, it becomes quite evident that this class has some punch when it comes to allowing the party to soak up a lot of damage. However, this does bring us to the end of this video. I hope you found it useful and informative, and I look forward to seeing you in the next one. I wish to thank you for taking the time to watch this particular video. I hope you found it informative and useful to familiarizing yourself with Fantasy Grounds in general, and that you had fun in the process. If you found the video useful and you liked the content of the particular video, go ahead and click that like button to let me know. And if you have any questions specific to the topic covered by this particular video, or just have some comments in general, please feel free to post something in the comments section, and I will do my best to respond to any questions that are asked. Additionally, I do release content quite regularly, and it's generally specific to Fantasy Grounds or 5th edition Dungeons & Dragons at this time. So if you'd like to be notified when new videos come out, go ahead and subscribe and click the notification bell to ensure that notification is sent to you when I release a new video.